Can you hear those conversations in the person's voice?
I can't hear their voice.
But you can hear the voice of a person singing a song that's stuck in your head. You can hear that voice?
Yeah, I can hear their voice. But like hearing a loved one tell me a life story, I hear it in my voice coming out of their mouth.
Do you want to be part of the podcast? Go to shanesbraindomain.com and click on the Aphantasia section. There you will find a question or prompt and an opportunity to contribute your thoughts and experiences. Simply record and submit your response, and you could be featured on a future episode. Aphantasia is a condition characterized by an inability to visualize mental images in one's mind. If you have just discovered that you or someone you love has aphantasia, or if you're just fascinated by the subject in general and love learning more about it, you are in the right place. The Discovering Your Mind podcast delves into all aspects of the mind's eye, including aphantasia, hyperphantasia, and everything in between. Welcome to the Discovering Your Mind podcast, brought to you by shanesbraindomain.com. I am your host, Shane Williams, also known as Shane's Brain, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Cole Williams. And today we are talking with the one and only Caitlyn Ortiz, who is a friend of Cole's and
Hi.
A friend of mine.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You are welcome. All right, so we're going to start out just by asking you what you do for a living or for whatever you do.
I work for a company called Stryker Neurovascular in Salt Lake City, Utah. Basically, I build guide wires that are put into stents, and they go up through the femoral artery and into the brain, and they remove blood clots that have caused stroke.
Oh, wow.
That sounds important.
It's a very interesting job.
That's really cool, actually.
I'm pretty happy with it.
I'm glad.
All right. What about other stuff? What do you like to do for fun, or what are some of your other interests?
Anything that has to do with creative expression, pretty much. I love art like Alex does, Cole's wife. Makeup, special effects, animation, anything like that, as well as psychology.
In this episode, we will be referring to what we call the Apple graph. If you would like to view the Apple graph to play along and better understand what we're talking about, you can find it on shanesbraindomain.com in the Aphantasia and Beyond section. If you are unable to view the Apple graph for whatever reason, it is a graph divided into 6 sections. In the number 6 section, there is a very detailed image of a red apple. In the number 5 section, it is the same image but with less detail. Number 4 is still in color but has less detail and more basic shapes instead of detailed hues and gradients. Number 3 is the less detailed apple but in gray tones without the color. Number 2 is a simple outline of the apple. And number 1 is blank, indicating no visualization whatsoever. This is called aphantasia.
Visualize a red apple in your mind.
Do I close my eyes or just visualize?
However you want to do it. You got it?
Got it.
All right. So now I want you to look at this graph, and I want you to tell me which one of these apples on this graph best represents what you saw in your mind's eye.
Number 5.
Number 5. Okay. So it seems like you got quite a bit of detail, maybe not like the most realistic apple.
Yeah, I can see like the colors and the shape, stuff like that.
Okay. Do you think that has to do with just the apple you were visualizing, or is that the most detail you could produce?
I could imagine what it would be like to bite into the apple and like taste the apple.
Have you heard of aphantasia before coming on the show?
I've heard the name, but I never really understood what it meant.
Okay. When we talk about aphantasia, we use a lot of terms for it, but my favorite is we essentially call it a blind mind's eye. So going back to that apple graph, if you were to ask somebody with aphantasia to imagine that red apple in their mind, they would report a 1. No mental visualization whatsoever.
Okay.
And that's what we call aphantasia, is the inability to conjure images in one's mind.
All right. So the first thing we'd like you to do is visualize a chicken in your mind. Is it like looking at a picture or more of just a thought or something else?
It's more like a cartoon. Kind of difficult for me to visualize like a real live chicken. Like with the apple, it's not in full detail, but I can see like colors and I can see shape, stuff like that.
Okay. Is there anything that you visualize that is in more detail, or is it all kind of cartoony?
It's all kind of cartoony, but it's more like a realistic cartoon.
All right. So with the chicken, is it in color or black and white?
It's in color. I can see red and white, just basic cartoon chicken
All right.
with yellow feet
Okay.
and a yellow beak.
Are the colors vibrant or muted?
They're very vibrant.
Is it in 2D or 3D?
I can imagine it either way.
Okay. So can you like rotate it and see it from all angles?
I can see it pooping out of egg. I can see it walk around. I can see it peck at the ground.
She didn't exactly answer the question, but I liked it anyway. And I don't think they call it pooping.
Right.
Well,
Those are two different things, but okay. All right. Is the chicken isolated or is there a background?
pretty isolated, but I can tell that there's like grass on the ground.
Is the image still or is there movement?
There's movement.
Can you make the chicken fly?
I can make it flap its wings,
Okay.
but we all know chickens can't fly. There's
But
a whole
can you
movie
make
about it.
it?
Can
Absolutely
you give
not.
it the gift of flight? No?
No, that's just too weird for me.
Really? Like
Mhm.
physically cannot.
I
give it
can't.
the-
It's weird.
Interesting.
Can you put a vest and a tie on the chicken?
I can. Oddly
Okay.
enough, that's not weird for me. I think it's just because I've seen images of a chicken in a vest before.
You
I can,
have?
like, I have. So I can like kind of recall a vague memory of like what that would look like.
So is that pretty common that unless you've like had experience with something, it's kind of hard to visualize it?
Pretty much.
Okay. Interesting. 'Cause-
Right. It seems very memory based, right?
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Is the image more clear with your eyes closed or your eyes open?
If I close my eyes, all I see is black. I can't picture anything.
Okay.
Unless I
Oh.
can have my eyes open, I can't see.
Is that like you think, Dad? Do you think that's like a partial aphantasia?
Well, it is interesting. I've had several people tell me that they can't visualize anything with their eyes closed. When I was interviewing my friend Robbie, he's one of those. And I said, so if you close your eyes and you think of something, what is that? He's like, I don't know how to describe it. I said, there you go. That's me. That's aphantasia. If you're thinking with your eyes closed and there's no visualization, I think that does, in that instance, kind of have an experience of what aphantasia is like. I don't know, but
It's weird for me because like if I'm awake and I close my eyes and I try to visualize, I can't see anything. It's all black. But I do dream. And when I dream, it's very vivid. And I can remember those dreams when they're like nightmares specifically.
do you see the chicken in your mind or is it projected out in front of you?
It's in my mind, but I could probably imagine a chicken running around here.
Okay. Is the image solid or transparent?
It's transparent.
In what way is it transparent? Like you said, it doesn't really have a background. So can you like see the blankness beyond the chicken?
It's basically like I'm looking down at a chicken and I can see the grass behind it. Like I can see everything.
So you
But all I
can see
can see
through
is
the
grass.
chicken.
Yeah.
Okay.
If the chicken made a sound, could you hear it in your mind?
I don't think I could. I can't picture it saying anything or, clucking, making any noise.
Now I want you to visualize a Glaucus atlanticus.
What is that?
Did your mind do anything? Did you try and visualize something, or was it just like I don't know what that is? So
The moment you said Glaucus, I'm like, is that a gun? But then you said
Right,
the
I had
rest of that, I'm like, what Is that like a Loch Ness monster?
So did your mind visualize anything when he said that?
I visualized a gun.
We're trying to learn more about how the brain spontaneously conjures images, especially if it's given no context. Like, obviously, if we say visualize a chicken, you know what a chicken looks like. And so you can bring that up. But if you have no context to go off of, what does the mind do? Okay, I want you to visualize any room. Can you zoom outside of the room to visualize the entire exterior of the building?
Yeah.
What about the entire neighborhood?
I have a vague idea.
So not like super detailed, but
Yeah. It gets blurry, you know.
What about the entire city?
Absolutely not.
We lose you there.
That's where I get lost. I can't visualize a city for anything.
Is the visualization still happening, but it's just so vague and undetailed that it's just kind of a...
Yeah.
Or do you
Like-
just stop visualizing?
It's kind of like my brain can't allow me to visualize like a city. Like I can imagine what it was like to drive through the streets of the neighborhood, just, heading to the store, or, just driving into my cul-de-sac and showing up at my house, or, anything like that. I can visualize and I can see it. But outside of the neighborhood is unknown territory for me, really. So it's really hard for me to visualize what it looks like.
Right. So do you think that if you did have experience, if you had ridden in a helicopter or something like that above the city and had that memory of what the city looked like from that view, then you would probably be able to do it?
Probably,
right?
yeah.
All right. Now, I want you to visualize 3 blue dots.
Okay.
Now visualize 9 blue dots.
Oh, that's a lot. Okay.
Okay. Now visualize 100 blue dots.
You're pushing the limit. I can't picture that many.
Okay. Can you explain what happened when we started to get up to, first of all, when we got to 9 and you said that was a lot. What was happening in your mind?
I could picture the 3 dots perfectly, like just 3 2D blue dots.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment you said to picture 9, I basically lost track of the other 3 dots, and I couldn't add more, maybe past 5 or 6, like the dice, like the number of circles you see on a dice. Anything more than that is hard for me to keep track.
And did you order them like you would see on a dice or something?
At first, no. When I saw 3, I saw just 3 dots in a row.
Uh-huh.
And then as they started growing, then I started seeing it as dice, where it was the 4 dots in a box, and then 5 with 1 in the middle, and 6, 2 columns of 3 rows of dots.
Okay, well, then, you mind if I play with this for a second? Because I want to see your mind is highly memory based, and I'm very interested in that. And I want to see if I can get you to visualize the 9 better.
Okay.
I want you to think of playing cards. Think of like a 9 of clubs.
Okay. Yeah.
Could you see that in your mind?
Yeah, I can.
Could you then take that format and turn those clubs into blue dots?
It takes a little bit of imagination, but
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, I'm just curious.
It
Because
starts
I think
to get a little bit sketchy. Like that's not how a club card
that's
is
not how
supposed to look.
that's not how the card looks. Okay, I'm interested because I think your mind can get there. I think it's just about the strategy you use to make it work. I don't have a good example for how to get the 100 in there. But
Well, I do actually.
Oh,
because I just interviewed a guy named Brett Kelly, and it was interesting to see how his mind was solving these problems. And they said, when you said 100, he's like, how do I solve this? And he thought, oh, well, there's 50 stars on an American flag. I'll just put 2 of those together, pop out the stars, and then turn them to blue dots. So he was doing kind of the same thing. He was going to reference things. He knows how many there is, and then just changing them out.
Yeah, I wouldn't have thought to even think of something like that.
But if you were asked to do what he did, like take the American flag and trade out the stars for dots, put two of them together, is that something you could accomplish?
It's a little hard to transform the stars into circles. Like I can picture 50 stars right next to each other, so 50 and 50. I can imagine that. Turning them into the blue circles is a little bit different.
Okay.
Yeah, it really seems like there are certain things where your mind's just, nope, not going to go there.
Unless
And
I experience it, I can't visualize it.
one of the things I'm trying to explore is the words and the phrases that we have in our society. And there's several that revolve around this subject. So I'm going to tell you 4 of them. And I want you to tell me if all of those phrases are interchangeable, they mean the exact same thing to you, or if they don't, explain why. Okay? So the 4 phrases are picture it, imagine it, visualize it, and think of it. Are those interchangeable?
I feel like they all mean the same thing, but there's key differences. Picture it is basically like imagining it, but you see it as a picture. Visualizing it takes a lot of imagination, and you can do a lot more with it. Thinking of it is there's no picture. I can't see anything. It's just thinking, oh, I got to remember to do this today, or I need to remember to do something else.
I'm curious here. If I were to ask you to say, think of your high school graduation, would that be different than if I had said to picture your high school graduation?
If you told me to think about it, I would think about like how I was feeling and, people I was with and what they were doing at the time. And if you tell me to picture it, I picture like as if I was seeing through someone else's eyes and experiencing it all over again. But it's still remembering that experience.
It just brings up different memories of what's happening. Like you're focusing on different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I find that really interesting because the few people that I've asked that to, it's kind of the same thing. Like, well, they're kind of all the same, but, and then there's differences. And to me, they all are the same thing. I can't distinguish any difference between any of those things. The exact same thing happens in my mind, which is pretty much nothing, no matter which one you use, right? So I do find that interesting. All right. So when you quote, unquote, think about something, does it primarily happen in images or sounds, a mixture of both, or something else?
Mostly images. Like I said before, I can picture it and I can think things out. If there's like a math equation or something I need to, do numbers or something like that, I can visualize myself riding in the air, writing out the equation.
That would be handy.
It's come in handy at work multiple times.
Yeah, that would be handy.
Can you hold your mental images for as long as you want, or are they fleeting?
I can hold them. I can, daydream the day away if I wanted.
Okay. In general, when you close your eyes, what do you see?
It's black, but, I still see kind of like white lines or, white shapes. Just, they're very like a flash kind of thing. Like they move, if that makes sense.
Okay. Is that every time?
Every time I close my eyes.
See, you know who that reminds me of, Dad, is Haley, right?
Yeah.
When we were interviewing Haley, her entire visualization was like that. She compared it to like smoky, wispy images.
Yeah.
Do you have any control over those like white line shapes, images? Or is it kind of just random?
It's kind of like random. Like you said, it's pretty much like smoke. Like it was a perfect way to describe it. It's always moving. Sometimes I can like make out shapes even and like imagine what would this shape be? Like something you would do if you were looking up at a cloud. You could, imagine what that cloud would be. There's times when my eyes are closed and I'm just, relaxed and I see those smoke lines and I can turn them into something else.
That is really cool.
Okay.
All right. Can you think of nothing if you want to?
Not really. My brain is always thinking of something. There's always something to do.
I mentioned this earlier with my friend, but what is it like for you to think with your eyes closed? Since there's no visual other than those smoky lines, can you describe what's happening in your thoughts when your eyes are closed?
Not really. I mean, like with my eyes closed, it's very hard to think about what even to say. like it's just black. I can't process anything. It's like my whole brain has come to a stop.
So in that way, are you thinking of nothing, or is there still something going on?
There are moments like when I said I can see shapes and I can turn them into things, but that's like totally relaxed. That's basically me thinking of nothing, is me visualizing what this cloud turned into or what this smoke line looks like. That's pretty much it.
See, now that sounds therapeutic. Is that like a relaxing and therapeutic thing for you?
It kind of is. It's basically like a reset to my brain, and it's just me taking the time for myself, and it's very relaxing. I've come to find out. If I'm just home alone and I'm bored, or stressed about something even, and I need to take a minute to myself, I'll close my eyes and I'll, try to relax.
Yeah, because that sounds like a really pleasant escape. My brain turns into a dynamic playground when I close my eyes. So that sounds honestly better.
Okay. Can you visualize to the extent that it completely takes you out of your reality?
It does. If I have one of those flashbacks, it's hard for me to come back to reality because it's, such a traumatic time. That kind of thing just sticks with you until you can eventually start calming yourself down. I close my eyes or take a breath, get a drink of water.
Okay. You mentioned daydreaming earlier. Does that ever take you out of your reality?
Occasionally, yeah. Again, if I'm bored, I'll daydream. I'll imagine scenarios of what would happen if this happened, or, what if this person came into my life? And it kind of reminds me of, dreams I've had. And even then, I'll remember dreams and nightmares, and I'll play out those dreams and nightmares as if they continued.
Okay. So when it comes to mind visualization, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much is it like actual seeing, or how much does it resemble reality?
Probably like a 6 or a 7. At times, it feels like an out-of-body experience, like watching it from someone else's point of view.
You're a wonderful dancer, she said with a smile, as I shimmied and shuffled and boogied with style. Thank you, I stammered. I appreciate that, but I just need to know where the bathroom is at. All Mixed Up, a motley horde of funny poems, is available on shanesbraindomain.com and Amazon.
So we're going to talk a little bit about mind audio now. We're going to shift away from the visualization for a little bit and talk about audio. We're going to start with 4 phrases again. Just tell us if you think these are interchangeable, if they all mean the same thing to you or not, and what they mean to you. So the 4 phrases here are inner voice, inner monologue, inner dialogue, and self-talk.
The first 3 are pretty much just in my head. Like, it's kind of like hearing my own voice in my head, and that's how I would talk to myself.
Okay. And what about self-talk? Is that a different concept to you?
Self-talk is basically just me talking to myself out loud.
So would you say you have one, an inner voice or inner monologue?
I think so. I definitely hear my own voice. I can't picture anyone else's voice in my head.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I were to ask you, because earlier we talked about the chicken and you couldn't hear the chicken, are any other sounds typically played out in your mind?
I can imagine what a car horn would sound like, just, going off right next to me. I can imagine what a car alarm would sound like, or a fire alarm. But if it's voices or, animal noises or something like that, I can't.
It seems selective.
It's very selective.
Okay. Do you play out conversations in your mind?
I do all the time.
Okay. What's that like if you can't hear the other person's voice?
I guess it's like talking to myself. It's just It's basically like thinking about doing this kind of interview with you guys. It's basically just talking to myself and myself asking myself these questions.
So you hear yourself playing out both sides of the conversation?
Yeah.
Okay. Is there always something audible going on in your mind? Does your mind ever shut up?
There's always thoughts going on, so my inner voice is very much a chatterbox.
What about when you close your eyes? You said a lot of that processing and abilities kind of slow down. Does that inner voice go away when you close your eyes?
I feel like it's more quiet. It's, like we've said before, it's more relaxed. And, I have time to slow down when my mind is racing 24/7.
Okay. I like that. It's like your mind has two different settings. And I think that's extremely handy.
It's definitely come in handy once or twice.
What does the phrase "I have a song stuck in my head" mean to you?
Ugh, it is annoying. It's basically like it's a small world stuck in my head all day long. Or, I hear a snip of the song on the radio or from my headphones that I just skipped the song, and now that song is stuck in my head. And I hear the song constantly, which is very weird.
So do you hear it as if you were listening to it on the radio?
I do. I hear it exactly as I would hear it.
Okay. So when it comes to mind audio, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much is it like actual hearing?
I would say it's like an 8.
So it's very interesting because it seems like the things that you can hear very clearly and it's very realistic, but it's selective.
Yeah.
In what your mind can actually hear.
Yeah, and I'm curious about something. So we've established that it's very memory based, and that the hearing in your mind is very selective. What about specific memories? If you have a specific memory of a conversation that you had with a loved one that means a lot to you, can you hear those conversations in the person's voice?
I can't hear their voice.
But you can hear the voice of a person singing a song that's stuck
Yeah.
in your head. You can hear that voice?
Yeah, I can hear their voice, but like hearing a loved one tell me a life story, I hear it in my voice coming out of their mouth.
Okay, that is cool.
Interesting. So I want you to imagine a song that involves multiple instruments and vocals. What's the song? Just so we can have an idea.
Temple of Love by Black Veil Brides and BV.
Okay, so when you're imagining that song, can you hear all of the instruments or just some of them?
I can hear the bass of the drum. I can hear the guitar. I can hear, the lead singer singing and, that switch off between the two bands.
Okay. Can you hear tonal changes as the melody plays out?
Yeah, I can hear the different tones of voice from each of the lead singers.
Okay. Can you change the tempo by speeding it up or slowing it down?
I can, yeah. I think it's just because I've heard this song so many times that it's like one of my favorites. So like I can imagine how the music video turned out, and I can see what it would look like if I sped it up, or the slow motion of slowing it down.
Can you imagine switching instruments in and out? For example, could you hear a guitar played as a trumpet or something else?
Oh, no.
No?
I can't.
What if we did it a little simpler? Say a guitar played as like a banjo.
I can, but it just totally throws me off, and now all I can focus on is a banjo.
Okay. So you can do it if maybe the change is a little more subtle, but it still feels weird.
It's very weird. Makes me uncomfortable.
Okay. Can you make the singer sound deeper and higher at will?
I can hear him go deeper, but it's kind of hard for me to imagine him or, think of him singing at a higher pitch.
Well, what if I asked you to imagine that the singer just sucked in some helium? Could you hear that?
I can. Weirdly enough, I can.
Okay. Can you imagine Yoda singing the song instead?
I can. Again, it's very weird it's uncomfortable for me to think of something like that because it's one of my favorite songs.
Could you imagine the song being played in a different genre? For example, this is a metal song. Could you imagine it being played as like bluegrass or country?
I can't.
I have one more question regarding the songs in your head. Can you adjust the volume?
If I think about it, I can't change the volume. It's always pretty much just as loud as my inner voice would be.
Okay.
Oh.
All right. We're going to talk about some of the other senses. So now I'd like you to visualize that you are at a movie theater concession stand and they hand you a big tub of freshly popped buttery popcorn. Can you smell it in your mind?
It's kind of difficult. I can get like a vague remembrance of what it would smell like, but it's not quite there. Like it's not a full smell.
Okay. So on that scale from 1 to 10, what would you rank it?
Probably like a 3.
All right. Still with the popcorn. What about taste? Can you taste it in your mind?
I can remember the crunch. I can taste the crunch of the popcorn. Not so much the taste unless it's like salted buttery popcorn. So I can taste like the salt.
Okay. So earlier you said you could taste the apple. How strong was that?
That was probably a little bit higher. It was probably like a 5 or a 6.
Okay. So again, it's going to be very dependent on what we're talking about with how well you can taste it. And do you think that's, again, based on memory or familiarity?
I think it based on how much that taste impacted me. Like if I have something super sweet, it gives me that sweet tooth and my teeth start tingling. And
So it's depending upon intensity too?
yeah, like with popcorn, It's not super, salted or buttered. And so it's very plain. It's very basic. But if it's like heavily salted or, there's chocolate on over it, I can taste the chocolate and the sweetness of it.
So like caramel corn might be a little easier?
Yeah.
What about like a chocolate chip cookie?
I picture a soft chocolate chip cookie, and that is delicious.
So you can taste that one really well?
I can. I love cookies. I love sweets. Like we've said, it's very selective.
It's very context dependent.
Right. Okay. What about the sense of touch? Can you feel the popcorn in your hands or in your mouth or anything like that?
I can remember the feeling of it in my mouth. Like I can remember my tongue scraping against a popcorn kernel, skin or whatever, and I can feel it in my teeth if it gets caught and, trying to pick that out. I can feel that. But if I imagine or think about picking up popcorn from the bucket, I can't feel it.
Okay. Let's try the cookie again. What if you had that warm, gooey cookie in your hands? Could you feel that?
Not really. I can think about picking it up and putting it in my mouth, but as soon as it hits my mouth, then I can feel it. I can feel the textures. I can feel the crumbs, stuff like that.
I think I might have a slight explanation for that. The sensory motor cortex in your brain that's responsible for basically your sense of touch, well, all of your senses, but the sense of touch, it's actually been shown that there are different amounts of space in the sensory motor cortex that are allocated to different parts of the body. And one of the largest portions of that section of the brain is dedicated towards the mouth and the tongue, meaning that is where most of our feeling is being directed towards. It's really important to survival, especially in babies. Babies explore everything by putting things in their mouth for that reason, because that's where the strongest sense of touch is in our body. One of the strongest. The other one is in our fingers. But so I'm curious as to why that doesn't happen for you. But that could be why when it comes to your visualization, it's only targeting the most prevalent source of touch in your mind, which is your mouth.
That's really interesting. I never even thought about that.
That is an interesting thought. Thanks, Cole.
Mm-hmm.
In this episode, we will be referring to the carnival picture. If you would like to view the carnival picture to play along and better understand what we're talking about, you can find it at shanesbraindomain.com in the Aphantasia section. If you are unable to view the carnival picture, it is a picture of a carnival at dusk with bright lights adorning carnival games and rides, including a large Ferris wheel, with many people walking around. All right, do you have that carnival picture handy that I sent you?
I do.
Can you put yourself in that picture?
Not really.
Okay, so you can't imagine yourself there or maybe see yourself in the picture, anything like that at all?
Not myself. It's basically looking at the picture, I see it as if it was in a movie. I can picture it that way as if it was like through my eyes and this is what I'm looking at, but I can't picture myself in the photo.
So if you're looking at it like it's a movie, can you add movement to it? Can you see the Ferris wheel start to spin or the flags start to blow in the breeze or the people start to walk? Can you imagine that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I can see the Ferris wheel moving, people walking around. I can see the trees moving.
Okay. In that regard, can you also experience any of the other senses? Like, can you smell anything? Can you hear anything in that picture?
I can hear people chattering. Like I can hear busyness of the crowd, but their voices are very muted, very dull, and all basically one tone. And then as for like smell, I can't really smell anything.
Okay.
Like I said, as if I was looking at a movie screen.
But that's different from actually putting yourself in the picture.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
When you read a novel, what is happening in your mind?
It's like a movie going on in my head. I can see everything happening. Like it's like daydreaming basically. I can visualize what's happening. You know, it's not detailed. It's just a general idea of what I'm reading.
Okay. How well can you think about what the characters and surroundings might look like? Is that vague or really vivid or something else?
I can't really imagine what the characters would look like. If I'm reading a book, I'll normally put myself in position of the main character and I'll experience the book through that way where I'll basically be the main character of the book and I'll go through the experiences with them. I can't imagine what other people in the books would be like or what they would look like, but I can imagine like a forest if it was mentioned, or I can imagine a castle.
And that's pretty good detail, those surroundings.
The forest definitely, castle's a little bit more detailed, and it goes back to that apple picture where it's not extreme detail, but it's like that, the color, the shape, slight detail.
Okay. As you're reading, do you hear the sounds and voices in your mind?
I hear myself speaking.
Okay.
And it's basically just me reading to myself.
So it's more like a narration.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you hear any sounds like sound effects of things happening in the book?
I don't.
Do you experience any of the other senses in your mind when you read?
Well, I can see it, but I can't feel, I can't smell, I can't hear. Like I can imagine what I would feel like emotionally in those kind of situations.
What about audiobooks? Do you like audiobooks?
I love audiobooks.
So between paper books and audiobooks, which do you prefer and why?
Mostly audiobooks, just because when I'm working, I'm allowed to listen to, music or podcasts, that kind of stuff. So I'll just listen while I'm working, and occasionally I'll, have those experiences of daydreaming what it would be like to be the main character of that book, or sometimes it's just background noise.
So when you hear the phrase, the book was better than the movie, what does that mean to you?
It means that there's a lot more detail in the books than were put into the movie. Movies are very theatrical. They're always about pleasing the crowd, but books are more personal feeling, has a deeper connection.
All right, we're going to talk about sleep and dreams. What do you do to fall asleep?
Most nights I'll put on something on the TV, just background noise. But really, I can fall asleep to just no sound at all as long as I have like a fan blowing or like something like white noise going.
Is it hard for you to fall asleep, or is it pretty easy?
It's pretty difficult, mostly because my brain is always going. There's always something to think about. There's always scenarios in my head.
So does the TV, the background noise, the fan, that just helps quiet your mind?
Pretty much, because it's basically just distracting my mind from my inner monologue, and it's putting it outwards towards something else. So I'm focusing on that thing.
All right. Are your dreams in color?
They are.
How vivid and detailed are your dreams?
Like the apple, they're not super detailed.
Are your dreams in first person or third person?
Third person. I see
see
myself.
yourself?
It's very much like a movie in my dreams. Like I'm the main character, and these are my cast.
Okay. So previously, you've had a really hard time hearing other people's voices. What about in your dreams? Can you hear their voices in your dreams?
I think they're my voice, just a different tone.
You're just speaking like a manly man.
Pretty much, it's my man voice. Or, it's my child voice, or, something like that.
It's interesting.
Right. Kind of like how audiobooks are, where the narrator will change its voice a little bit depending on who's speaking.
Yeah, exactly like that.
That's something I find very weird, because I feel like we've been able to, with you specifically, we've been able to get different results by like changing the context or changing the experience in some way. But the no hearing other voices seems to be like one constant in your mind that does not change.
Absolutely. I can't hear other people's voices.
What if you took a song you're really familiar with? You could hear the voices in the song. What if you took that voice and tried to make it say something else?
Oh, that is not even possible.
Okay.
I can't imagine, Black Veil Brides singing this and then switching over to someone else's song like Post Malone. Like I can't visualize that. It's not normal.
Is there emotion attached to your dreams? Do you feel the emotion of them?
Extremely. I feel so much emotion. It's overwhelming at times.
When you're dreaming, do you know you're dreaming?
I don't.
Are you aware of your thoughts while you're dreaming?
Not really. It's like I said, it's a movie, and I'm just watching everything play out in front of me and just experiencing the emotions that come with it.
Okay, let's talk about memory. If you want to recall a memory, can you see it in your mind?
I can.
Do you experience your memories in first person, third person, or both?
First person.
Could it be third person if you wanted it to be, or is that kind of out of the realm of possibility?
I think it's out of the realm of possibility. It's just because memories are personal. They're experiences that I've gone through.
I find it interesting, though, that your dreams are in third person, but your memories are in first person.
Just from talking to you, it sounds like you said, a dream is I'm watching a movie, and a memory is that's personal. That happened to me, right? That seems to be the difference to me.
Yeah.
I disagree, but that's a conversation for a different time.
Well, what do you disagree about? I want to hear it.
I think memories can be movies. I can take myself like at my high school graduation. I can see it first person, but then I can pan out and see the whole thing happening as if I were watching it like a movie.
Right. I didn't mean it wasn't possible. I was talking about Caitlyn specifically.
Oh, for Caitlyn specifically, yes. I thought just in general. Yeah.
No,
sorry.
I know in general everybody's different. I was just trying to key into maybe the difference in her case.
Okay, I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
How dare you?
I'm all over the map, honestly. Anyway, so going back to memories, if you're recalling a memory, does it feel like you're reliving the memory or something else?
It definitely feels like reliving it. I feel the same emotions that I felt during that memory. Like if remember a happy memory of like when I was being proposed to, like the joy, the excitement, the love that I was feeling there. I remember a flashback of something traumatic. I feel the same feelings that I felt during that time.
If you didn't have any pictures or videos of you as a kid, would you be able to remember what you looked like back then?
Not even a little bit. I can't picture it. Like we said, it's like first person view. I can see it through my own eyes, but I can't, see it from a third person view.
What if you remembered like looking at yourself in a mirror when you were younger?
Even then, it's a blurry picture. It's just a blob of color.
Interesting.
Okay. How would you describe how your mind stores information?
Not well. I mean, my memory is just all over the place. Someone tells me, "Do you remember this time?" and I don't, even though I experienced it with them. It's very hard for me to remember until I have like a lot of detail of what happened or a picture representation of what happened. Like if it was a picture of me and Alex on the beach of Sand Hollow, then I can remember that. But if I don't have that visual representation, I can't really remember.
Okay. So when we're talking about mind storage, the pictures, the physical things in the real world are linked more to your memories than any process within your mind itself?
Yeah, I need to have something to remind, like a physical item.
Okay.
Okay.
And it can just be like small things, even like it can be a color or a feeling that something reminded me of.
Okay. What does the phrase search your mind mean to you?
It means to recall something.
Does it feel like you're searching your mind, or is that kind of an empty phrase?
Kind of an empty phrase. Like I said, it's just you remember when this happened. If I do, I do. If I don't, I don't.
Okay. Do you think that how you visualize affects how you perform in your career or hobbies?
Definitely. It how I see everything is very impactful on how I work. I'm very aware of everything when I'm at work. I'm very visual, and when you have the kind of job that I do, it's very important, stay in reality and, focus on what you're doing because these medical devices are saving people's lives. And that's super important. It plays a very big part in my job.
Okay. What about your hobbies? Do you think visualization aids with, you said you're really into the creative arts. Do you think visualization helps you with that?
It can. If I want to draw something, I have this idea of what's in my mind. I can try to, draw it as close as possible. It's not going to turn out exactly like I envisioned it. It helps me get things out of my mind and onto paper in a way.
Okay. I have a quick question on that because I'm also an artist, but I have aphantasia. So in order for me to draw something, it's very helpful for me to have a reference. So does that work the same way in your mind? Can you just pull up the idea or the picture in your mind and just hold it there and just try and replicate it the same way I would with an actual picture?
I can try as much as possible with a reference picture. Like if I pull up a photo of something, just basic, like a cartoon or something, I can get the general idea of it down, but I can't get down to details. Like with the apple, I can't see the detail if I'm not looking at the picture. So.
Okay.
So this is kind of a catch-all question, ending us off here, a couple of catch-all questions. If you were to try to give a general description of how your mind works, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as kind of like a cog in a clock. It's always going, it's always moving. There's always something to know, there's always something to learn. But, at times when there's like extreme anxiety or depression, that's like a wrench in the cog. And it stops and it's halted on that moment and it's kind of like obsessed on that moment until I can, take out that wrench. I keep going.
Okay. I really like that description. I think that's beautiful. So what would you say are some of the upsides to how your brain works? Some of the positive things we can take out of this?
I'm a very positive person. I mean, I love being optimistic about everything and learning new things every single day. And I like that I can store memories and remember them in the way that I do, because it gives me a reason to reflect and change future outcomes.
What about downsides? What do you think are maybe what do you think is maybe a downside or two to how your brain works?
Downside is it's very emotional. I can feel everything. I can feel every kind of emotion you could feel, and it's very intense because if I'm feeling very happy, I'll be very happy. And if I'm very anxious, I'll feel very anxious. It kind of holds me back from, moving on.
Okay. All right, last question. If you woke up tomorrow and had aphantasia, how do you think it would affect your life?
I think it would make me very sad, honestly. If I can't imagine my life as a movie or, see the motion in the carnival picture, knowing that other people can do that, it would make me very envious.
She called you sad, Dad.
I'm sorry.
I'm kidding.
That's just how I would feel.
Right. Yeah, it's genuine. I like it.
We've come to terms with the fact that all of our brains are unique and we're happy with all of them.
I'm happy with my uniqueness, my quirkiness.
You're unique. That's the important thing here. Nobody
it makes
does
everyone
things
exciting and interesting.
Mm-hmm. Nobody does things the way you do it, and that's what we do this podcast for, is to explore all those little things that make you different from every other person on the planet.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, follow, and engage with us, and share it with your friends and family as we continue to explore this fascinating subject. For additional information about this episode or Shane's Brain, check out the show notes. Thanks for listening to the Discovering Your Mind podcast. You are beautifully unique.